I don't think that any other organization, any other country or military is fighting with one hand the terrorist organization that still has hostages, and with the other hand is delivering humanitarian aid to the enemies that launched the attacks against us and also hold our hostages.
As Israel enters a critical new phase in its war against Hamas, the stakes have never been higher. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reportedly greenlit the full occupation of the Gaza Strip, including areas where Israeli hostages are still being held. It's a bold move that signals the limits of diplomacy and the rising urgency of broader military action against Hamas. Joining us now from our Jerusalem studio is our TBN Middle East correspondent, reporting directly from Israel, Yair Pinto, co-host of Boots on the Ground, which you can see right here on TBN every Thursday night. Yair, always great to see you, my friend. And let's start with this strategy that it seems will be employed perhaps in the days to come, a full occupation of the Gaza Strip. Now, people watching Yair might say, well, I thought Israel already was occupying Gaza as part of this war that obviously Hamas launched on October 7, 2023, nearly 2 years ago. Hard to believe. What does a full occupation of Gaza look like, and why would that be a good move potentially for the Israel Defense Forces?
So, Eric, the situation is like this. After Hamas launched its attack against Israeli civilians in October 7, Israel began a ground maneuver into Gaza with two purposes. One is to retrieve the hostages, and the second is to dismantle this terrorist organization, Hamas. And so far, the IDF is in control of around 75% of the Gaza Strip, but the forces on the ground did not enter key areas like Gaza City and the central refugee camps in the Gaza Strip, because in these areas, according to the IDF intelligence, Hamas is keeping the remaining Israeli hostages. We still have 50 Israeli hostages. Out of them, 20 are supposed to be still alive. And we've seen videos that Hamas just published that the clock is ticking. They are starving them to death. This is the situation. Negotiations failed, and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel decided, that's it. We are not counting on diplomacy anymore with a terrorist organization. We will not negotiate with terrorists no more. So he called on the IDF Chief of Staff to prepare a plan to conquer the Gaza Strip and retrieve the hostages with a military operation. The chances are very, very good, very high that the hostages will be hurt in such a move, because Hamas terrorists said that if they will see IDF soldiers coming near the locations of the hostages, they will order the terrorists to execute them like they did in the past in the area of Rafah. So this is the situation. Now the IDF is preparing multiple plans to the Israeli political echelon to make a decision on how to move next.
Yeah, and Yair, you laid it out beautifully there. Look, it's just a very tough position for Israel to be in that, look, Israel could have conquered Hamas and conquered Gaza within a week in the wake of October 7th, but the hostages, as you said, 20 living hostages still there. And look, we saw these images earlier this week released by Hamas and Islamic Jihad out of Gaza. These poor hostages are emaciated. It looks like scenes from the Holocaust. I hate to say that. It pains me to say that, but it's true. As you said, Yair, Hamas is intentionally starving the Israeli hostages. If Israel ramps things up militarily with the goal to just crush Hamas and end this thing, I guess it's tough to say whether the hostages would emerge from this alive, right? That's all along. That's why Hamas has been holding on to the hostages. And now it seems like end game. And I guess it's tough to say, right, if the hostages will survive this.
Well, Israel already proved in the past that an operation to retrieve the hostages can work. We already retrieved 2 hostages with Operation Arnon. This was an operation within a heavily populated area in which the IDF special forces were able to retrieve the living hostages out of Hamas. So the hope is that with applied ground maneuver and pressure on the terrorist organization, the militants that are holding the hostages might agree to receive immunity and financial benefits by giving out information or even bringing the hostages to the Israeli security forces. So hopefully that will be an option that will give us the hostages back while still carrying out a ground maneuver. But we don't have any other options, Eric. We don't want this war. We just want our hostages back home.
Yeah.
And they don't want to negotiate. So what can we do? Military option is the only way.
You've seen the literally tons of food and humanitarian aid that has been set to enter Gaza and be delivered to civilians there. Tell us what's happening.
So I've been hearing all these accusations around the world that Israel is starving the Gazan population. And I thought, okay, this sounds like a complete lie, but let's go to the Gaza Strip and check it out and show our viewers what's happening for real. So we entered into the Gaza side of the Kerem Shalom border crossing. And from that area, Israel is delivering tons of aid from Israel into the Gaza Strip. And then it unloads this aid, make sure that there's no weapons in it. And then the United Nations is supposed to deliver this aid into the Gazan population. But what I have seen is tons of aid just sitting in the sun and rotting because the United Nations went hand in hand with the Hamas propaganda to starve the Gazan population, and in a political move refused to send the trucks to give the aid to the Palestinian people. This is what I've seen on the ground. I've seen tons and tons of tuna cans, of flour, of corn, of baby formula that was just sitting in the sun and rotting because the humanitarian organizations and the United Nations had a political agenda to attack Israel and to join Hamas, a terrorist organization, in this propaganda campaign to say that we are starving the Gazan population. I don't think that any other organization, any other country or military is fighting with one hand the terrorist organization that still has hostages, and with the other hand is delivering humanitarian aid to the enemies that launched the attacks against us and also hold our hostages. This is what the IDF is doing. And on top of that, to fight all these accusations, the IDF started to airdrop humanitarian aid itself using our own Air Force airplane aircrafts to deliver humanitarian aid into the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. This is what's happening on the ground. And despite that, the world is accusing Israel of starving the Gazan population. I want to see any other nation in the world that will invest money, efforts in order to feed the enemies during a war. And this is what's happening. This is what the IDF is doing. I did that as part of my IDF service in Gaza. I've seen it, but I've also seen it again now as a reporter in the Gaza Strip. So there is a very rough situation in Gaza. The Palestinians are suffering, but that's because of the Hamas terrorist organization. It's not because of the IDF, not because of Israel. On the contrary.
Yeah, and Yair, look, we have footage of Hamas terrorists seizing the aid, seizing the food. Then they'll either keep it for themselves. If you see these Hamas terrorists, they look very well fed, to say the least, or they'll sell the food to their fellow Palestinians at an exorbitant price. It's just pure evil what's happening. And the UN, as you said, is aiding and abetting this. And by the way, unprecedented to feed the enemy population. I don't see, for instance, Yair, Russia feeding Ukrainians right now as they're at war. So Israel, it's madness, the situation Israel is in and the world pressure that's being put upon Israel. But I think it's also biblical in a sense. We knew these days would come in terms of the world turning against Israel in many cases. Hey, two people who have not turned against Israel, Ambassador Mike Huckabee, Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. President Trump sent them to Gaza last week to see the situation for themselves firsthand, and they praised the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, which is run by our good friend Johnny Moore, which is delivering 1 million meals per day to Gazans. Tell us more about the positive side of things that the average American is not hearing about thanks to the disinformation delivered by the mainstream media.
So very early in this war, the IDF realized that the United Nations humanitarian aid trucks are being looted by Hamas. So they started thinking about other ways to get the food directly to the Palestinian people, bypassing the Hamas terrorists that sold the food to them or just used it for themselves. And together with the United States, the GHF, they opened these humanitarian distribution centers all across Gaza. And what's happening is that in these centers, the food and the aid is being distributed directly to a representative of each family. Each family member that is coming is getting food for at least 48 hours for up to 7 members of his family. And they've been doing an amazing job at distributing the food directly to the people of the Gaza Strip with more than 1 million food packages per day. This is a lot. The IDF is protecting them because Hamas does not like that and started to launching attacks, including throwing grenades and injuring 2 United States security personnel of the GHF, including also Gazan people that are working for the distribution centers. So this is clearly affecting Hamas because it's losing the grip of the population. But on the good side, they are getting the aid and they recognize that the IDF are not the bad guy, but Hamas are.
Yeah, the Hamas are modern-day Nazis. This is a demonic death cult that must be crushed, and we pray that happens very soon, that the hostages come home. Yair, great breakdown, my friend. Thank you for correcting the record. Again, we get so much disinformation from the mainstream media here in the West, but you're on the ground. You are our eyes and ears in Gaza and in Israel and then beyond. Co-host of Boots on the Ground, our TBN Israel correspondent, Yair Pinto. Yair, God bless. Keep up the great work, my friend. We'll see you again soon.
Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.